I've got 900 people coming to see me. Going to see Neil Oliver. I've never met him. And we're just going to chat.
I've been listening to the Delingpod for years now, and I'm just very excited. It's great to be part of an unexpected gathering of people. This is an audience I wouldn't normally or otherwise have the chance to be with. It's important to have events like this because people had a lot of pent-up questions, pent-up anxieties, frustrations that they wanted to get out somewhere. There's a lot of censorship. In fact, censorship's getting even worse. This is an opportunity, hopefully, to be with like-minded people and a frank exchange of views.
The world's going mad, and nobody else seems to have noticed.
I love Delingpod. Go and subscribe to the podcast, baby. I love Delingpod. And listen other time, subscribe with me. I love Delingpod. Go and subscribe to the podcast, baby. I love Delingpod. And listen other time, subscribe with me.
Hello everyone. Please welcome James Delingpod.
Really excited, and that took me by surprise. I was actually looking on my phone to try and get the name of somebody whose birthday it is today, and I was going to be really gracious, but I can't bloody find the. So before we go on, I imagine there's 900 people in this room, so I would have thought divided roughly by 300. There must be 3 people at least. Hands up if you've got a birthday today. I can't see you. Well, look, I was wondering, so how many is that altogether? Is that 3 or 4? I've got my reservations about the song Happy Birthday, because since I went down the rabbit hole, I've sort of got this idea in my head that everything is not what it seems. And, are you with me on this? I mean, should we sing Happy Birthday to the birthday people, or is it Illuminati? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. Why don't we sing Happy Birthday to them, whoever they are, whatever their names are. I wish I could remember the name of the girl who I promised I would say, Yes, that's the one. Yeah, say your name. Natalie? Oh, no, it wasn't you. It was another one. Who else's birthday? Yes, probably. I can't hear you, that's the problem. Anyway, let's sing Happy Birthday to all these people whose birthday it is. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, whatever your names are. Happy birthday to you. Now, go and see, birthday girls and boys, go and see Ben. And where's Ben? He's there. Go and see Ben, and he will give you the special present from me. Yes. Oh, and I know what else I was going to do. I was going to have a competition to see who has come the furthest. Because I know some of you have come from absolutely I mean, you're insane. You are, aren't you, basically. We're all a bit, that's why we're here, isn't it? We're a bit kind of, just sorry, I'm not wearing my tinfoil hat, but that sort of thing. So, should we have our opening bid on who has come the furthest? Who reckons they might have come the furthest today? Was that Cameroon? This isn't going to work, is it? Because I can't hear what. Have we got a roving mic or anything? Cumbria. Okay. Any advance on Cumbria? Chicago. Where? How? Vancouver. Nigeria. That's not as far, is it? That's not as far as Chicago. But I think Nigeria and I think the Nigeria and Chicago should go and see Ben as well. Anyone who's come from Australia? I mean, I don't mean lives here. That's cheating. No. South Bank. That's south of the river. I mean, yeah. Anyway, what? Where? Derry. That's not as. I love Ireland, but it's not as far as. We haven't got that much time because, but I wanted to say another thing. I know sometimes people come up to me and say, "Oh, thank you, James, for, you sort of kept me sane in the dark times when I thought I was all alone and stuff." And I really appreciate that. I mean, if I have made a difference, I'm so happy. But but thank you. But what I wanted to say was, however much happiness I've brought to you, it's nothing on the happiness that you lot have brought to me. I love you. I really do. And I know some of you, I burn you in chat rooms and things. And I don't mean it. I mean, you shouldn't. I'm sorry, but you do kind of deserve it. If you don't want me to burn you, don't say fucking annoying things to me, and then you won't get burned. But no, I genuinely mean what I say. When I was at university, there was a dinner at the end in our final year. We'd done all our finals and stuff. And pretty much everyone had got their jobs lined up. They'd done the milk round, and they'd all got their jobs in the management consultancy was the thing there. Had a massive starting salary. Or they'd got jobs at banks, like Goldman Sachs and stuff. And I'd done this. I mean, I'd gone through the interviews, and their interviews must have been bloody good, because they all realized I'd have been really shit as a merchant banker. And, they were going on to do law and stuff. And I would have been absolutely crap at any of this stuff. I mean, I'm very unsuited to most jobs. And I had this brilliant tutor called Peter Conrad. And he said, I said, well, what do you think I should do? And he said to me, James, I think you should just go out into the world and be James Delingpole. And I didn't realize that was a career option. And for years, I did, mainstream media journalism and stuff. And only finally, in the last 3 years, have I finally got this job where literally my job is to be James Delingpole. And I can only do this shit because of you. So thank you. Anyway, without further ado, let's start. Welcome to the Delingpod with me, James Delingpole. And I know I always say I'm excited about this week's special guest, but wait till you see who it is. It's Neil Oliver! Listen, come on. You're there.
Hello.
I know you're not used to big audiences, Neil, but I knew that you were the perfect guest when a few days ago we had this. I mean, you're so hard to get hold of, and finally you.
Really? Am I hard to get hold of?
Yeah, you don't answer your emails, and so you call me up and you say, well, what day is it? And it turns out that it was only thanks to Trudy, your wife, that you knew what day it was happening.
Yeah, we arranged this just over the phone, really, months ago.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I came away from it convinced it was a Sunday. So I was going to come here on Sunday night, and it just happened that it came up in conversation with Trudy, who's in here tonight, and Trudy said, that can't be right, that date is not right, that's not a Sunday. And I said, well, I better phone James, which I did, and then it confirmed what I should have known all along.
But it's like meeting my soulmate. But I know some people don't realize this, but I am actually quite flaky. I completely wing it. In fact, I forgot to mention one more thing, because I didn't do my thank yous. And I wanted to say, above all, a big thank you. There's probably loads of people I should thank. You know, my mum, my dad, Dick, Helen, my sister, people. But Ben, who's made all this stuff happen, he's been brilliant. And I mentioned Ben, first of all, out of gratitude for all his organizational skills. But secondly, if this evening is really shit and it's really boring, just don't. It's not my fault, it's Ben, okay? Anyway, yeah, it was like meeting my soulmate, Neil, because I've never met anyone who was as flaky as me
useless.
before.
Yeah.
No, but in a good way.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to ask you how you became you. But I as you know, I like to do a lot of research, and I was thinking.
I saw your tweet today where you were presumably doing your research from the back of a horse.
That was it. So I had a choice. I thought, do I go through Neil's monologues and remind myself of some of the things he said? Do I look up what the name of the program he was before, he went to GB News? And I thought, either that or sitting on a horse. I thought, yeah, I'm going to go sitting on a horse. So this is all very fresh. So I first came upon
Are you sure you know who I am?
No,
I don't cook.
you're the Scotsman from TV.
Yeah, I'm not Jamie Oliver.
No. I remember you did the sketch about the man putting on his Wellington boots at a football match. Well, no,
That's not me.
put it on. That's Billy Connolly. That's the other one. But I did come across you early on in your career because as you know, I did TV reviews. I still do TV reviews. And one of the programs I reviewed, because it covered one of my interests, was you did a thing about military history with another bloke. Mm-hmm. What was that called?
Yeah, I did a television series called Two Men in a Trench that we filmed between 2004, and we archaeologically surveyed and excavated 12 British battlefields, and that was my first foray into television. I had never intended to do anything to do with television. It happened completely by accident. I think a lot of people that do the kind of television that I used to do, that is how it happens. I was an archaeologist, and I was involved in archaeological projects, and one of them came to the attention of a production company who thought that watching people excavate. Time Team was already up and running by that point on Channel 4,
Yeah.
and BBC wanted an archaeological excavation type series, and we were standing in the right place at the right time, and that happened to myself and a pal of mine, Tony Pollard at Glasgow University.
Because as you were saying that, the sort of light bulbs, evil thoughts started coming into my head. I was thinking archaeology. Because, there are whole fields that I no longer trust, and every field. I mean, paleontology.
Yeah.
I particularly don't trust that because dinosaurs, didn't exist. But archaeology, am I right in thinking that is one of the many fields which has been so colonized by, is woke the right word, but it's very politicized.
I knew it was politicized even when I was studying at university because it was colonized in the 60s, I suppose, by leftist politics to some extent, and there were grand things like the labor theory of culture. So we were told that it was only when people started working using tools with their hands that they then began to speak, because they could no longer use their hands to communicate. So they started, because their hands were occupied with tools, they now started to speak in order to communicate effectively, and then they began to organize, and before you knew where you were, you had trades unions because people could organize. and that in a nutshell was the labor theory of culture. So I knew at the time, but it was always, but I was lucky because I was at university in the mid-1980s, and there was still an old guard of archaeologists from another era. The professor at Glasgow University was Leslie Alcock, who studied under Sir Mortimer Wheeler. He was actually in the army with Mortimer Wheeler, who was like the granddaddy of archaeologists, popularizing archaeology. And he was of an ancient tradition, almost like an antiquarian. So there was that old guard at Glasgow University when I was there, but then there were the young bucks coming through that were espousing, post-processual archaeology and postmodernism, and all of that was getting folded in because archaeology was a kind of an omelette into which you could, or a pizza onto which you could put toppings. And so all sorts of things were getting pulled in from all sorts of other disciplines. Anthropology, philosophy, politics were all getting pulled in. So I was aware of it at the time. And without a doubt, like you, I have become questioning and skeptical and increasingly cynical about everything.
Yeah.
And I do look back on, I'll hear a word being used now, and I'm transported back 30 odd years to my university days, and I'm suddenly back in a lecture theatre, and I see or I hear a bit of the lecture as though through fresh ears, and I think, oh, wait a minute, that's what that was all about. So yes, it has, like all of the disciplines, I suppose it's been colonised by progressive ideologies, and I mean, I've seen, like everybody in here, I'm sure you've seen. They've now started finding graves of gender fluid warrior graves.
Yeah.
So they've found more than one. So they're already finding people buried with the paraphernalia of war, but they're trans. Apparently, this is something that it's now become possible to discern from the archaeological record. So like I say. The omelette's becoming more and more full of strange ingredients.
Have you gone down the giants rabbit hole yet?
No, I haven't. Wait, tell me.
It's a good one. The word giants, and
As in Noah and the time of.
well, I mean,
yeah.
the giants
Where are we?
first appear in Genesis.
Yes.
But there are the bodies, the skeletons of giants all over America, for example, which the Smithsonian Institute is busy getting dug up by the military and then either
Really?
hiding them or destroying them. Yeah. They don't want us to know about. I don't know what.
How giant are the giants? What are we dealing with?
Well, I mean, it's not so giant that you'd be really, really impressed, but giant enough to be big. And apparently,
Big, like
I think
big
we're
and big, strong people.
over 7 feet, I think.
Right.
And the Indians, the Red Indians, as we're not supposed
Native
to call
Americans.
them anymore, the Native Americans. Apparently, somebody, where am I? Somebody, I think it was was it William Cody, I think, wrote a book in the 1920s. Sorry, we're getting kind of off topic here, but yeah, that's what we do.
You know, we had a topic.
Okay, we had a topic. Okay. William Cody, I think, wrote a book. He traveled around America, meeting the different tribes, and the tribes would tell him stories about how the giants used to set traps on the trails, pits and stuff with spikes in them, and they would feed on the Red Indians or the Native Americans. Anyway, before we leave archaeology, where are you on what's his face? Ancient civilizations. What's his
Graham
name?
Hancock.
Graham Hancock. Yeah.
Oh well, I've tried to get him on. I want to talk to him on GB News, and I've tried to get. But he's quite. If anyone's got his mobile phone number, I'll happily talk to him. I was never. It's really. I can't stress this enough. I was never an academic archaeologist. I studied and got my degree, but what I really liked doing was digging things up.
Yeah.
I liked the practical side of it. I liked excavating, and that was the great joy of it, which I think possibly kept me away from a lot of the philosophizing and stuff. I wasn't really interpreting things. I was just doing the grunt work a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Just digging holes, finding things, cleaning them up, recording them, photographing them. That was the aspect of it that I liked.
Yeah.
And so, I never really troubled myself with with that. I've forgotten where I was going with this. What did you ask me?
It doesn't matter.
No, it does. Where were we? Graham Hancock, yeah. So I was only, thanks for that. I was only ever fascinated by ideas.
Yeah.
And it didn't trouble me too much. There's a terrible snobbery out there in all of academia about there are things that obviously academics feel are beneath them and they won't contemplate because they fear being made to look ridiculous by association. And that's really what is causing all the antipathy towards Graham Hancock, because his ideas are so different, and they require such a leap into the dark for a lot of academics that it's safer for them just not to countenance the conversation, never mind bothering to contemplate maybe agreeing with some of it. But I was never, and I still am troubled by any of that. So I would love to talk to Graham Hancock in depth and at length about what he's found and what he's seen, because apart from anything else, he's been all over the world to places and has visited places I have never seen, and just to talk to him about that. So I'm as over the last few years, all of the floorboards of my world have been knocked out from under me, and I've been free falling ever since. Waiting. You know that feeling you get when you go over a bump in the road and your stomach, you flip because you get weightless for a second. Well, I feel I've been weightless for the last few years, and I still haven't hit the ground. So you can talk to me about giants, you can talk to me about Graham Hancock, because I'm just not sure anymore.
Yeah.
And I find the only thing I can hold on to is just being as open-minded as I can possibly be, because I no longer think I understand the truth. I'm feeling in the dark for the bits of the truth.
Yeah.
It's like that thing about the blind men that get taken into a room. They've never encountered an elephant, but they're told to go in and touch whatever they find and describe what they think that they're encountering. And so one of them gets the elephant's tail, and one of them gets its ear, and one of them gets a leg. And then they start arguing with one another because they're describing completely different realities. And they come to blows because they have no idea, because what they need is to come together and put the bits together sensibly and realize that they've got an elephant, and so on and so on.
Yeah, no. Oh, I just remembered, sorry, completely apropos of nothing. If you're trying to mold a creature out of clay or potty putty or whatever, the way to do it, I learned from a sculptor, is to do it behind your back. So you can't see it, and you do it through feel. Sorry, that's just by the way.
Yeah.
Now, all this is, by the way, is foreplay. We're gradually working up to the money shot, but because I'm thinking
there's a significant bit between the foreplay and the money shot.
Yeah. So we're easing. I was going to move on to your gleaming eyes and your lustrous hair. Because
now you're talking.
And your seductive Scottish accent. Because I think these are things that the BBC must have got excited about. And I was just wondering, you and I have both worked. We've supped with the BBC with a long spoon. In my case, I was wondering how much in your days with the BBC, because you then went on to do Coast. Mm-hmm. How much of a sense did you get that at the time that you were working with Satan?
The BBC never loved me.
They didn't.
They never really did. I was never employed directly, but I was never a BBC presenter as such. I would a company, sometimes within the BBC, sometimes an independent production company would put together an idea. They would attach me to it, and if it got commissioned, then I would be the presenter of that, or one of the presenters of that show. That's how something like Coast happened, or all of the projects that I was involved in. So I was only ever, attached to them maybe for 6 weeks or however long it took to make a series, and it was just a freelance contract.
Yeah.
So I was never really inside the tent pissing out. I was always, outside the tent pissing in, so I was never. Some people within the BBC who got taken in that way would be mentored, and they would have somebody within the structure that was kind of looking after them a bit. Especially in the case of first-time presenters, people that didn't know the ropes particularly, were sometimes looked after a bit by somebody within the structure. I never was. I never got a foster parent within the BBC.
Do you mean like an MK Ultra handler?
Well, I think it's probably a bit like that. I think obviously I wasn't ever picked out to be a Guy Burgess or
Yeah.
I didn't give off the right
Yeah.
pheromones.
Yeah.
And I was not picked up to be part of the in. I was never in with the in crowd.
Yeah.
And but I did. I mean, I got to do fantastic things with it. I got to fantastic places with the BBC. I had hardly travelled anywhere. I was in my 30s before I stumbled into television, and it was really only. I was more like in my 40s before I suddenly got all these opportunities to travel to places. So I was just blown away by the novelty and the opportunity of places that I was suddenly seeing all over the world, and places that most even well-traveled people don't get to go to.
What, so you bastard, where did you go? Because I didn't see any of this stuff.
Well, I mean,
where
I've
did you
been.
go?
Well, if you go, Australians. Mostly, I mean, Australians often talk about, one day when they get the chance, they'll go to the Kimberley, or they'll go to Arnhem Land. Some of the remote, wild places up in the
And you went
north.
there?
I've been in these places multiple times, and I've spent days, in the company of and talking to Aboriginal Australians, and I've done all of that stuff, which, even people, even born and bred Australians, don't necessarily get into these places and get to do these things. I went to a place, an island off of the coast of Victoria, and it's called Cleft Island, but it's also more famously known as Skull Island, because it does, if you look at pictures, it does look a bit like a semi-submerged skull, like with the eye sockets coming up out of the water, and it's a preserve. You're not allowed on it, and the nature of it, it's sheer, smooth cliffs that go up from the sea. And as far as anyone in the modern era knew, the only people that had been on it were a couple of sailors who had sailed out to it in a yacht and had managed to climb it with ropes and the gear for rock climbing. And apart from that, nobody had been on it in the modern era. It was separated from Australian mainland during the sea level rises at the end of the Ice Age, maybe 30,000 years ago. So it's a bit like King Kong Island. It's cut off, and I've been on it. And there are more people have walked on the moon than have walked on Skull Island. Right? So you can't go. You're not allowed there.
But that's not true, Neil. Actually.
I walked right onto that.
I'd like to correct you there. That was a test. That was a rabbit hole test.
Hypothetically, more people have walked on the moon than have been on Skull Rock. But so what I mean, I was never really within the establishment really long enough to get jaded or hackneyed by the whole thing. The whole thing was it was very, very exciting because of the places that I was going and the opportunities that I got to talk to people in the strangest places. Right. I've been in the north, I've been in the Arctic, I've been in Antarctica, I've been all over.
You bastard! I'm hating you now.
I've been all over these. Someone like me, I would never have thought to go to these places, far less had the resources to get. So the whole thing was just so when it came, the BBC were finished with me, and all of that was over before I begun at all to get, cynical and looking around and thinking what exactly was going.
Right.
It was all in the past for me anyway.
But okay, so because I know that your Twitter handle is Coast Guy.
Because that's what people call me. Well, the nice people that come up to me, and they say, well, they're all nice people that come up to me. Actually, that's everyone that I get nothing but good encounters when out and about, and people say, "Oh, you're the Coast Guy." So that's why I started doing that.
Okay, I didn't realise how much travel had been involved, because obviously, not having done my research, I've never seen an episode of Coast. But a bit like, I never listened to pop song lyrics, unless maybe it's Led Zeppelin. But I used to sort of make up in my head what the lyrics were about, because I couldn't be bothered to listen to the arse that they in the same way, I made up in my head what Coast was about. I thought it was about people just going to seaside resorts around England.
That is what it was.
It was?
That is what it was.
So what was all this foreign travel for?
Well, because of Coast was quite popular for a while, and it meant that I got involved with other projects that were commissioned to go to other places. So, so I went to, I did a thing for Channel 4 called Cleopatra, Portrait of a Serial Killer. It was a one-off film because she had bumped off all of her relatives to get to be Queen of Egypt, and we had found, or archaeologists had found the remains of her stepsister, half-sister, Arsinoe IV, Princess Arsinoe IV, and they had used genetics and other things to identify that this really was Cleopatra's half-sister, that she got Mark Antony to bump off on the steps of the Artemisium, the Temple of Diana. Mark Antony, murdered Arsinoe at Cleopatra's instruction. So I went out to this grave in this temple in this great sarcophagus in Turkey, and saw that in this unique opportunity to stand and to hold in your hand remains of someone that you know is a blood relative of Cleopatra and the Ptolemies. And I get a big kick out of that. I also handled a part of a pelvis that is almost certainly Alfred the Great's. Pelvis. I mean, I've cupped Alfred the Great's buttocks in my hands. And I think, you remember that handshake game that people used to do, where if I had shaken hands with you and you had shaken hands with whoever, with Barack Obama.
Now. You've touched Alfred the Great's buttocks.
Yes,
and I've touched them.
You get that. I thought, so when you think, I've handled human remains of someone who was physically in the presence of Mark Antony and Cleopatra, and figures from history that are so mythical that it's hard to believe they were ever real. And so I've had these, and it was purely the magic carpet of television that did that for me. And I never really got over the excitement of that, to think too much about the internal politics of what the bigger organization was that was doing this. I was never in the building. I was always in the middle of nowhere, in the back of a Land Rover trying to get to some obscure location.
So it may have sounded so far like I've just been floundering around trying to work out what the fuck you did before. But actually, there was calculation. There was calculation here. You see, I was trying to get to the point where, so you were a BBC thing, and there are those who think, perhaps even in this audience, one or two, who think that anyone who...
Do you believe Cleopatra was real?
I wasn't. I haven't gone down the rabbit hole.
I just wondered.
I wasn't aware that. I think there was so much crazy stuff we don't know about. Like 3,000 years.
Alfred the Great, is he real?
In the Uhtred books, he is.
Good, yeah.
But so.
Just checking.
No,
just
what
checking.
I was trying to. No. But I'm happy to go down these rabbit holes and discover they're made up. But. What I wanted to...
I think they're real, but anyway.
Stop trying to confuse me. There are people who think that everyone... And you've kind of described the MK Ultra sort of process whereby these talents are kind of nurtured and...
Well, it's kind of a negative thing. It's an apophatic thing, really. I just know that it didn't happen to me.
Yeah. No,
I don't really know.
I'm about to give you your get out of jail free. Because there are those who say that anyone who comes from that background is, by definition, going to be controlled opposition. People say that about me.
I get that all the time.
That they say, with my background, and look at who he was friends with, and et cetera, et cetera. And
I'm not quite sure what controlled. Well, I know what controlled opposition is, but I'm not quite sure who it is that I am apparently controlled by, because it's so kind of double, triple, quadruple agenty that I can never, when I hear that accusation leveled at me, I don't understand in the moment of the accusation when it's coming at me who it is that I'm controlled by, because it's often so Byzantine and so complex that I'm not even sure what I'm being accused of.
That's how they work.
That's how it works.
That's how they work. They're endless level. It's like the skins of an onion, and you don't know who to trust. I mean, I find it quite upsetting actually, because you sort of get to know and like somebody. Okay, like Lawrence Fox, who you work with on
yes,
on
I'm close with Lawrence.
Yeah. I did my previous podcast with Lawrence Fox, and I tried to turn off the comments on Rumble and Odyssey and Thingy, because they're really annoying. I mean, I hate the people who complain about how you know, like I walk off to have a fag, or you know, the dog is annoying me and I have to go and feed the dog, or I think, you know, deal with it. That's part of it. But so I put something. I do a podcast with Lawrence Fox, and instantly told, don't you realise he's one of the bloodlines? Everyone in the acting industry is one of the bloodlines, and he's Illuminati, and here are some video, you know, one eye and stuff. And
well, I mean, a lot of what you find yourself in corners where you're almost just coming out with cliches, but I just feel I have to, at the moment, I just have to begin again trying to do what I've always done, which is take people at face value as I encounter them. And I had never met Lawrence. I knew from television. I'd seen him in films and television series, but our paths crossed over the last 2 or 3 years, and we've become close, and that's it. I mean, I'm close with Lawrence Fox, and we talk all the time, and we're very interested in what each other talk about.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not at the point where everyone I encounter I'm just imagining is a controlled. It's controlled opposition that's out to get me, because I think that way madness lies, you know. And the whole revelatory nature of the last 2 or 3 years for me has been I've lost contact with a lot of people that I'd known for a long time, and that vacuum has been filled by a whole different group of people.
Yeah.
And I have got an enormous amount from being with and talking to the people that I've met in the last few years, and I am being open-hearted about the whole situation and trusting the people that I'm meeting. And taking them as they present themselves to me. And rather than, I think if you just walk into a room thinking who in here is controlled opposition and who here has been, you know, where's the next trap coming from? You can't do that.
It's pain. It's really exhausting. You've got to basically be trusting. I mean, I've developed this weird thing where I think that that actually properly evil people, they don't like me. It's like the opposite of Damien walking into a church. They just like, I've seen it. I mean, there was a certain cookery writer who I think might be a witch. And I don't know, I mean, this is a theory going on I'm not going to mention her name, but I met her, and I could tell she didn't like me. She was, but anyway, that's by the way. I wanted to ask you, what was your entry point down the rabbit hole? When did you start realizing that stuff was not as it's sold to us?
There wasn't really there wasn't a crystal clear moment of epiphany. I didn't have there wasn't a day when the old world fell apart and something else was revealed to me in all its richness. I suppose for a lot of people, when we got locked down the first time, and I like everybody else, I had watched the footage of people dropping dead in China and so on, and I didn't really think that was possible, and then of course it didn't happen. I mean, I thought, right, the next thing is going to be that we're going to be in some kind of apocalyptic situation where people are dying by like flies.
Well, like the Black Death.
And they're going to be scooping bodies off the street. And and like everyone else, I'm married. I've got 3 children. And we think, oh, what should we do? Yeah. What should we do? But after 3 weeks or so of that first lockdown, when none of that was happening, I thought, right, well, it's not that. Whatever this is, it's not the bubonic plague. That's not the situation in which we find ourselves. And then, of course, everything else happened. Then vaccines were invented, wherever they came from, and then there was the invitation to have them, and then the increasing pressure to get them. So there was this gradual accretion of thinking that I just felt wrong in my skin, and happily with my wife Trudy, we both felt extremely uncomfortable and itchy with it. I mean, metaphorically speaking, the whole thing just made our just felt uncomfortable in our skins about the whole, that's not right. And watching everything that people in authority were saying on television, standing behind podiums, Trudy and I would just look at one another and think, there's something really hinky about that. That's really odd. Yeah. And so there was, like I say, it was this gradual accretion of, and then once people keep saying the same sorts of things. Once you see it, you can't not see it. It's like, you remember the 3D pictures that were just fuzz, but if you squinted at them, you could make a sports car or a stag or something kind of appear in 3D. They were quite a big deal they were quite a bit of a craze. It's a bit like that. If you kind of once you see the wrongness, you can't make it go away. And so where it started out, obviously for me, around the COVID thing, and then it became everything. And then I started reevaluating the politicians and where they came from and what they were saying. Then I had always been vaguely, in a completely unfocused way, skeptical about climate crisis. I thought that never, like everyone says, I'm not a scientist and I had no scientific reason for doubting it. That just didn't seem right. And so it was one thing after another, and then, war in Ukraine, and one thing after another. And once you've got your kind of 3D magic goggles on, you think, none of that's right. None of that is not right. It's really, yes. It's amazing. It's really amazing being in the room here with you and hearing responses like that, because there's such a sense all the time, even now, even 3 years in, of people with the pent-up need to say, this is all bollocks. And there's a great catharsis in it, and the podcast and the things that you do, and me and different things doing the thing, we at least get a chance to say, almost in a kind of a Tourette's way, you get to almost, you get to say a certain amount, and there's a release in that. But I'm so aware, and I've been so aware, people, like everyone, you talk to people in the street every day, and people come up and say hello, and then quickly get into, there's no small talk. It's people get straight into serious conversation about these facts, total strangers. See these fucking vaccines, and you're away. You're suddenly you're away with these deep conversations. And we've been doing up our house steadily for years and years and years, and we have, guys are coming in, electricians and plumbers and plasterers and painters and all the rest of it, and people are talking, going, what do you make of her? See her? What she's saying now, is that, what do you think? And you say, I think it's all bollocks. And there's, so do we. There's this desperation to download and dump all this information, and it's such a shared experience.
Yeah, I'm very glad. I'm glad that you included Ukraine on the list, because actually there's lots of people out there, I mean too many, who got the death jabs right, but don't get that, they didn't fall for the death jab psyop, but they fell for the blue and yellow flag psyop, and you haven't fallen for that one.
No, because I mean I am my thing is history. I love my history books, and that's my thing for a long time, as you know. And as soon as the Ukraine adventure started unfolding, like a lot of people, I'm sure, I just started reading some stuff. I just started looking at some books.
Yeah. Crazy stuff.
Actual proper books that you can obtain in a library or in a good bookshop. And I read around the subject of Ukraine, and I thought, well, whoa, hang on a minute. This didn't just start in February 2022. This is a real big story. This is a complicated story with a lot of moving parts. And why are people just suddenly being told, one man, the embodiment of evil, other man, God Almighty, nothing in between, and any dubiety in that realm just makes you an evil person, and you have to pick a side, and you have to pick your side now, and there's only these things that you can say, and here's your laminated card of things that you can say about him, and there's your laminated card of things you can say about him, and if you deviate from that orthodoxy, there's something terribly wrong with you. And I thought, how on earth did we get to that? Because this is geopolitics, and even I know enough to know that geopolitics is a pretty complicated area to get involved in.
Yeah.
And I don't claim to have a military historian's, far less a geopolitician economist's understanding of what's going on between the West and the East. But I knew within 5 minutes of reading the first book that it was a whole lot more nuanced than what we were being fed.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
It's kind of, I know that you're not quite as far down the rabbit hole as me. And the reason I know this is because in the early days, like 2 years ago, we had email exchanges, didn't we?
Uh-huh.
And I was kind of your bunny rabbit guide. I was trying to show you how far the rabbit hole went, and you were going, oh, what?
Yeah.
I mean, once
That's
you
true.
start,
That's true.
it's not. And this is why I get
And
annoyed.
what the difference that you made early on is you were someone that I knew that I didn't have to watch what I was saying.
No.
You know, I thought,
No.
you know what, you can,
Never a
you know how your sort of spidey sense tingles with people that you don't know, but
Yeah.
you somehow you instinctively think, well, I definitely won't be talking to them about that.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to bring that up. And I knew I can't even remember now why this is true of a lot of the encounters that I've had in the last 2 or 3 years. I don't actually remember how I came to have your email address or your mobile phone. I don't know. But just one day we were talking to each other. I think actually we spoke to each other on a phone call rather than an email to begin with. I think
Was it Grindr?
it was probably Grindr. I think I swiped left. And I just thought when it came to talking about any of it, I thought you're just gonna listen to what I'm saying, and I'm gonna listen to what you're gonna say.
Yeah.
And you might be of a more extreme point of view than me, but I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. I just know that I can safely talk to you about these topics.
Yeah.
And you were just offering, and it was a real relief, a real release. And in much the same way that characterizes your Delling-pod, I would say, because I listen to that, obviously, and it's such a cast of characters, and you know going into it that you're prepared to listen to, people talk about anything under the sun, and you're just curious about what they're saying, and some of it you engage with, and some of it you're combative with, and whatever. And I thought that was really therapeutic.
Yeah. It's a bit sad in a way, because like the reason I latched onto you in the first place is military history, and like paleontology, it's another area that I now think is absolute bollocks. Everything we're taught about the causes of wars.
I'm very suspicious about everything. I've had a really quite a childish interest in many respects in a topic like the First World War.
Yeah.
Because my dad took me to the battlefields in France. And, so we had so a lot of it for me was that kind of bonding thing with, I was away with just my dad, and we were away seeing Tyne-Cot and Langemarck and all these amazing places, and reading the information boards, and, eating French food and staying in funny little hotels and stuff. And my dad and I started doing that when I was still young, and so there was a sort of a childish fascination with it for me, and also my grandfathers both fought in the war, and so on and so on. And I wasn't really, as is the case with a lot of the deeper politics, I didn't really have time for. I mean, I was doing other things besides, and it was enough for me to just go and have my mind blown by how many dead bodies there were in Langemarck.
Yeah.
There's a space half the size of this stage, and it's got 30,000 bodies in it because the Germans were only given a certain amount of land, and they had to put all their dead in 4 places. My head was blown by that kind of the scale. I really never got, with the First World War for the longest time, I never really got beyond the scale of it, and knowing that my grandfathers had been there, was just enough to preoccupy him. And it's only now, you know, looking back and finding out about, you know, the role of people like Cecil Rhodes and all the rest of it, and all the Machiavellian machinations and maneuverings that were going on to isolate Germany as the threat to, you know, global dominance and all. And you read that and you think, my God, that's certainly an interesting story. At the very least, that's a fascinating take on the subject. And then it just feels all the time like the picture that I had been holding in my head about everything that was never particularly in depth or erudite or academic, but even the picture that I had in my head, just made of all my various fascinations, is just fragmenting and falling apart.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure.
So First World War, it's just by way of example. So if we had a pyramid, ooh, oh look, people are going to, but just say we had a pyramid. So at the bottom of the pyramid, sort of normie level, would be Sarajevo, Gavrilo Princip, you know, that was German expansionism, blah, blah, blah. And then sort of in the middle of, no, this would be more like that meme with the different levels of the head and then the exploding head and the, you know the one I mean. So in the middle, there would be the Milner Group, Cecil Rhodes and central bankers, Federal Reserve, 1913, and then war breaks out, you know. And then the peak of the pyramid, which is where I am, and I was wondering where you are, is satanic blood sacrifice.
I've always been very straight. Do you know? I'm a product of a very typical Scottish Presbyterian background of a sort, but born of growing up with parents that had their backgrounds, and I've always been quite straight and small c conservative about everything. You know, I've never indulged extreme outlandish views about anything. And so I find, you know, now in my mid-50s, you know, plunging into the tropical waters of satanic blood sacrifice is, you know, I've got some sort of, you know, I've got some sort of S&M and stuff that I've got to do first to break me in.
Right, okay.
But you know, I can't. There's some clubs I've got to attend before I feel that I've really got the moves ready for that kind of stuff. But then to continue that tortured analogy, I don't have a problem with anybody that's in those clubs. That's consenting adults. Crack on.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not dissing it, and I'm not saying any. I just don't know about that.
Well, I think you're doing very well if you're already on Milner Group level of understanding of that, because that's you're already way beyond the normies.
I'm just open-minded about it, about everything now. I think it's almost like, I suppose the analogy would be, you know, I've spent my life with, you know, black and white 2D photographs, and now I feel as if I've been given a stereoscopic, three-dimensional view that I just hadn't contemplated before. You know, it's a richer. I mean, you know, I can barely remember what kind of education I got at school, and you know what we covered topics in the way that we did. You know, the First World War, the Russian Revolution.
Yeah.
We did sit and we skimmed through it, and I sat my exams and I got my results, and I went off to university. And like I say, I got into archaeology because it was fun, and I liked playing at it really. I liked the tools and being on sites with JCBs and diggers, and it was fun, and I didn't. And it was almost like COVID happened. I woke up. I was in my early 50s, and the world. I just suddenly gradually, like I said earlier, this gradual a realization that the world was a much more complicated, messed up place than I had thought it was.
Yeah. You seem to be implying earlier on that I was kind of crazy, weirdo.
No, I don't think you're crazy or weird.
But what I was going to say was that I too was very straight and conservative, apart from my
I hope you've gleaned so far already that I definitely don't think you're crazy or weird. I don't think that at all.
What I mean is, I subscribe to the full set of values. I used to believe that the British Empire was one of the great glories of civilization, and that, you know, if you'd asked me to do 1,000 words on that subject, I could have trotted out for the Mail. You know, 900 quid, thanks very much. I mean, we're all taught this. It's part of the brainwashing thing. So I'm delighted that you're gradually going up to the top of where the eye is.
I'll tell you what it is. Because I've never had academic aspirations at all, I think it's been a big part of my natural immunity. Because I've never been, and I was mentioning it in the context of Graham Hancock, there are levels that people get to, I think, in their understanding of the world and upon which they base their sense of self and their qualifications, their publications, the things that they have said in public, the stances that they have taken are the scaffolding holding up the people that they are. And to lose that, to see that scaffolding dismantled would be to lose themselves. And I don't feel as if that wasn't the case for me. I wasn't holding as definitively and as confidently to the ideas that I had. My ideas were just sketches, maybe not even very good sketches, just recognizable enough. And so for me, to contemplate having a conversation with Graham Hancock about lost civilizations does not for me entail losing any sense of who I am. It doesn't, to contemplate the possibility that he is right and what I was told is incomplete does not undermine my sense of myself. And I think that's what's stopping a lot of people. It's how people who are, let's say, much more academically accomplished than I am have got a lot more skin in the game than me, and I'm not so worried about. I'm quite happy to have what a lot of people might regard as outlandish conversations with people, because they're not outlandish to me. I've only ever really been curious about what makes people tick, and why they do the things they do, and why they've made lives the way they have in the places that they have. And so all of this is just a whole new level of talking to interesting people and hearing ideas and thinking, God, what if that might be right? I just find that fun.
Exactly. So, this is the money shot moment. What do you think is going on?
What, the universe and everything that surrounds it? You mean,
Well,
like,
what do you think? I mean,
Well, I think the place where I am now, I suppose, I do increasingly subscribe to the idea that we have been fed, and this includes food. It's not just a metaphor.
Yeah.
We have been fed a lot of rubbish about a lot of things. So I've become increasingly interested in the food that we're given to eat, and the way it's produced, and so that's a whole thing. I'm increasingly of the opinion that we are unhealthy and unhappy, many people, and that it's on account of the food that we've been given to eat. I think that's a huge part of it, and I don't think that's accidental. I think we've been given things that our bodies shouldn't be processing as food, and that's causing a lot of problems. And then that's quite literal. But I also think the stories that we've been told to explain society, to explain what's happened with our democracy, so-called, the way in which our establishment operates, I do think it's been captured. I think the institutions are gone. Education, health, senior academic, universities and all the rest of it. The judiciary, I think there's institution. I absolutely accept institutional capture has been a steady process that has compromised and corrupted a lot of the world in which we live, and that I think, in short answer to your question, I think we've been handed a fiction, and that it's and that to quote the X-Files, the truth is out there.
Yeah. obviously, I agree with everything you've said so far, but how far have you gone into thinking about where this is all coming from?
Will you tell me where you are? I'll join in at the chorus.
Okay, I'll tell you where I am. I think that this goes back, that there is a tiny, tiny predator class which has been with us since pharaonic times, since the Babylonian era, since they've always been with us, and their method of control is to control the masses is to lie to us and to poison us and to manipulate us, and that these people are still with us. I'm not even sure they're totally human. They may have sort of reptilian blood in them, I don't know. And they
You should try sitting up here. It's quite a thing.
Could you, I imagine if you said that on GB News, they might. Do you think they'd be funny about it?
No, I don't think. I mean, I wouldn't be. I could have a conversation with Graham. Let's say Graham Hancock. You know, his name's been invoked, and there would be no problem with talking to Graham
Yeah,
Hancock.
but he doesn't
about
go reptile, does he?
civilizations. Have you ever asked Graham Hancock directly about reptiles? I don't know. I don't know. I do believe that there's a one world government, and I think to some extent there probably always has been a one world government. I believe that I think there's a tendency amongst a minority of people to centralize control, and I feel very foolish that I didn't pay more attention to it for more of my life. But you know, they do say that everyone's realizations about the reality of the world comes to them and occurs to them at different times, and because it's it's still, I suppose, a relatively early stage for me. But I do believe that there's a tendency to try and centralize control, and that now the technology is there to make that dream a reality. And I think there is the potential out there for us to be, enslaved digitally by all the things that people in this room, I'm sure, are worried about. Your digital ID, central bank digital currencies, and all of the rest of it. I think for the first time, there's probably been a natural inclination amongst out there in the, whatever you want to call it, predator class or whatever, but a desire to centralize and have greater control over the masses that was never possible. The reach wasn't there.
Yeah.
The technology wasn't there. If you were King Henry VIII, or if you were, Holy Roman Emperor Frederick Barbarossa, or if you were Pharaoh, Ramesses II, there were just limits to what you could impose because the technology wasn't there. And it's, Hannah Arendt talked about, the banality of evil, and I think it's now just the case that ability, that technological ability to administrate and the bureaucracy. That structure is now possible to get 8 billion people or whatever under observation, under surveillance, and controlled in a way that simply hasn't been possible before. And it's inevitable that for that type of person that thinks that's a good idea, it's irresistible now.
Totally. Yeah. We've got questions. As people know, I have been white-pilled in the last 3 years.
Which is the white pill?
The white pill. Okay. So what happens is you get red-pilled. Mm-hmm. You go down the rabbit hole. Then you realize how completely fucked everything is, and you become black-pilled, and you become kind of cynical, and you just think, it's all over because they are everywhere. They've got lizard heads. They've got tentacles probably and stuff. But then you get the white pill, and you realize that God has got this one. And you see, it's weird. It's weird. It's weird how many awake people are also Christian, and in a kind of unabashed way, because culturally we've been encouraged to think that Christianity is a cringe thing.
That has absolutely been my experience. I've had a thing sort of going for a while now. People write to me from all over, and it's amazing. And it started with a single letter that came addressed to Neil Oliver somewhere near Stirling Castle. And the letter came, and I was so impressed that it arrived that I took a photograph of it and put it out on Twitter. And it, you know, and then, and now I've got all these letters that come to me all the time from all over the world. Pictures of me, pencil sketches of me, this guy, and well, it doesn't, I've got no way of knowing how much of it comes, but a great deal of it comes to my house. And the unifying theme of, let's say, 3/4 of the letters is faith. It's amazing. The number of people whose natural immunity to the madness has been their faith. That's a recurrent, and it has been Christianity. I suppose there's been a few instances of people it's speaking from the point of view of other faiths, but it has almost exclusively been people of a Christian faith, and that's all sorts of denominations within the world of Christendom. And they talk about that this is a battle between good and evil, light and dark. Yeah. And they quote scripture, and it's very much been the case that this has scraped away a lot of maybe people were hesitant about outing themselves as being people of faith for a long time for all sorts of reasons, but that they are out now, and I am being written to unashamedly by people saying that it's their Christian faith that has got them through a lot of this, and I absolutely think that a battleground of all of this in the years ahead will be faith, without a doubt. I think that people of faith will come increasingly to the fore, out of the background, and it will be about people declaring their faith as part of what they think is essential to regain and reclaim a lot of what's been lost.
But where are you on the?
Where am I?
Yeah.
Well, again, you know, I was baptized when I was a baby, and if I was asked the question, I would say I'm Christian. I don't go to church.
Yeah.
I haven't been to church since I was a little boy, but I definitely have. I've always had, without really interrogating it particularly, I've always, you know, believed in God and and because I was raised in a Christian civilization, that is my faith.
Right.
But I don't go to. I'm not a
No,
church
you don't have to. It's okay.
I don't go to church, but
that's not the rule.
And there is absolutely, and why wouldn't there be a great sense of communion? Because so by far the majority of people that have reached out. I'm not sure that's a funny thing that we say that, don't we? Now we talk about people reaching out, but anyway, people have reached out to me, and they are people of faith, and I have. Even vicariously, you might say, but it's more than that. But I've certainly bathed in the warmth of that, because their conviction that the solution lies in faith. And well, you said, you know, that God's got this. Well, I have had that emotion expressed to me in thousands of letters using different language. Yeah. And you think, well, why not just relax and go with that? Yeah.
Okay. I think you're a step below the sort of full Delingpole. Yeah, I mean, you know, I think that God is just like, he's going to destroy him. I mean, it's going to be great.
Have you always been religious?
No, I was christened, and
were you a churchgoer?
Then I went to confirmation classes so I could get the one of my godparents give me a gold St. Christopher. That was what I wanted at the time. But that's an order of difference from cultural Christianity, and then you move on to this stuff is real, and that's when it gets exciting, because all the stuff that they've tried to remove from Christianity, the most interesting stuff, the supernatural element. There's, I had embarrassing school chaplains giving really boring sermons, and you sang the hymns and stuff, but it's kind of meaningless without the actual. There is a devil, or there is an evil one. There are forces of darkness. There are demons. There are angels. There's a hierarchy. There's a heavenly council, divine council. I mean, it's Milton. It's Paradise Lost. This stuff is real, and that's an exciting rabbit hole, I would say.
Is that the majority of you in here? I mean, do you feel like that?
I think so. It's weird. On the marches, you must on the marches. You must have felt this.
I would say I definitely. I mean, I'm completely comfortable saying that I think there is, without a doubt, a demonic, a dark element to what is being imposed, without a shadow of a doubt. And if being aware of that is being aware of the reality of the adversary, then I do buy it, because I do something that's absolutely, I feel in a way that I haven't felt in the first 5 decades of my life. I do feel that there's darkness out there that I was not aware of before, and I do subscribe to that. I do think there's a dark element to what's going on, which I would not have expected to hear myself say even 5 years ago, certainly not 20 years ago. But I feel it now, and I'm not in any way abashed about saying it out loud.
Yeah, but just to pin you down before we move on to the next question, when you say demonic, I mean, it's like people say diabolical. I've got a diabolical headache, or that curry was diabolical.
Well,
the adjective is the metaphor.
I believe in natural law. I believe.
Right.
Well, it's a silly thing to say. You can't believe in natural law. That's like believing in gravity or something. But I mean, I think natural. I'm just aware of natural law.
Gravity.
It's a minefield up here. I have read about natural law, and there's the way the universe wants to be, which I would, in terms of an analogy, I would say, a ball wants to float on the surface of the water. That's what it does. You can force the ball under the surface of the water and hold it there, but it's against the natural order. And you have to apply force to keep it there, because if you take away that negative pulling under force, the ball will go back to where it wants to be. And I think the universe has a rightness to it. There's a natural order. There is a natural order. And I think the reason why so many of us feel physiologically uncomfortable with a lot of what's happening at the moment is because it is an inversion of the natural law. I think that's what you're feeling.
Yeah.
And I think there's a certain, perhaps a comfort that comes from that, because like the thing about holding a ball under the water, eventually whoever's doing that runs out of the energy to do it. And the ball will just come back up to the surface. And no matter what is done to subvert or invert the natural order, whether it happens today or in 100 years, it will reassert itself, because there is a natural order. And without having to subscribe to specifically to a given religious faith, I think it's almost enough, and I think it comes from the same place, to just be awake to the idea that if you're feeling uncomfortable with the way things are, there's a real reason for that. You're not mad, and you are feeling something that is real.
Yeah. Okay. We've got time. We've got 10 minutes. Just quick. Well, just do because people will know about GB News. What's going on?
I think we need GB News because it's a terrestrial. It's on the terrestrial network. So if you've got anyone that's got a television can get to it. Can just press 236 and there it is. And there's a broad spectrum of platforms and opinions that are being aired on whatever, online, on Rumble and Odyssey and YouTube and all of the rest of it. But there's no denying that terrestrial television puts you into a realm where you can be potentially in contact with a very broad church. Well, it is just an uncomfortable reality. I suppose it's like if you want to play football, you can play football in the park with goalposts for jumpers, and you can have 20 aside, and you can pick up the ball and touch it if you want to do that, and you're all in agreement. If you want to play in amongst all the other teams and be in amongst the football league, then you have to you have to play by a set of rules. And you don't have to do that. You could just play in the park, 50 aside, do what you like, have your own game. But if you want to play in the sort of recognized, organized leagues, and that's what GB News decided to do. they decided to be playing in amongst, Manchester United and the rest of it. So they have to subscribe to a set of rules. That's just the way it is. That's you can't operate on terrestrial television in this country without doing that, and that's fair enough. But if people want to turn away from that and go to other platforms, then that's also fine. But any content that's out there, if it's on YouTube, then by definition, the people that are getting their content out on YouTube are obeying a set of regulations. Because YouTube and everybody else has a certain set of guidelines to which they expect everyone to adhere. So by definition, any content that you're finding, unless you're just gathering together in a room and sharing ideas in the old-fashioned way, if you're watching it on a screen somehow or listening to it, it's submitting to some kind of regulation somewhere, not Ofcom. And censorship is absolutely getting worse. Without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, if I thought censorship was bad 2 years ago, it's definitely worse now, and it's hard. I mean, I've got a couple of podcasts that I do myself that are out there. I do them with a friend. Sorry, what I mean is I've got my own podcasts, and we have to watch all the time because content gets taken down on those platforms. The censorship, without a doubt, is getting worse. But the point is, I believe that we need GB News. I've been cancelled. Without going into the specifics, in the last 3 years, I no longer am represented by an agent. My agent, I was dropped by the National Trust for Scotland. I no longer have a column in the Sunday Times. I was dropped by Combat Stress, which was a war veterans charity that I was an ambassador for. I was dropped by These Islands, which was a group that was working to maintain the union of the United Kingdom. I was even dropped by the Association of Lighthouse Keepers, for whom I've been a patron for 15 years. 15 years. I'm no longer. So that's gone. So, and I want to get my voice. I want to get my voice heard. And GB News, now I watch GB News as a viewer as well as taking part in it as a presenter, and there are opinions shared there, and there are ideas there that I shout at the television screen as well. But I am in there, and being on there and being on Channel 236 means that I can get out to I can reach people, and so I think for me I think it's absolute. I think it's absolutely, because if GB News if GB News falls over tomorrow, well then what? Then what have you got? Then you really do you've got one less. That's just one less platform giving some people an opportunity to give some alternative ideas, and that
Good.
wouldn't be good.
We've now got 5 minutes. You can't. You've got to be really, really pithy on some of these, okay? Because there was more than 2 questions, it turns out. Okay. What's your favourite coast in England?
It was Northumberland.
Okay. Do you ever wish you hadn't gone down the rabbit hole?
No, I don't. No, if I only got to say a couple of sentences tonight instead of all the stuff I have said, the revelation that I've been on, the beginnings of a new understanding that I've got, and the relationships that I have struck up with a completely unexpected group of people, I would not swap it at all. I think being worried, being anxious, being perplexed, and sometimes feeling that there's no hope. That everyone has those moments of darkness. I think that gets a bad rap. I think it's better during the course of your life to experience some of that and to be aware of it. I would hate to be if you offered me the opportunity that I could have lived out my 3 year and 10 as a sort of happy dummy, unaware, not noticing anything, and just blithely content, and not questioning and not seeing that. I wouldn't want that. I would far rather go with what is, and if you want to call it going down the rabbit hole, then I wouldn't change it for a minute.
If you could repeal one UK law, what would it be?
Repeal?
Is that law?
Well, that's actually, I mean, it's an impossible question, I suppose. But because of the way things are going with censorship, let's say, if there was suddenly a binary choice between censorship the way I think it's going and the freedom to say whatever you want without consequence, if it was a straight binary choice between totalitarian censorship and people being able to say whatever, and it being offensive and dangerous, whatever, then I would opt for that kind of freedom of speech. If it was a binary choice. So it's rather than being able to pinpoint a specific, it's not my field, I don't know, but I don't know about what law I would repeal, but I would undo censorship the way that knot that's tightening is just going to asphyxiate all creative thought.
Did you? Oh yeah, no, but we've only got 3 minutes.
No, honestly, I am broken-hearted about the idea that Mark isn't on GB News. I thought he was he's certainly a jewel in the crown, if not the jewel in the crown. And I wish he was still there. And also, I'm still in touch with Mark Steyn and Mark Steyn Online. I'm still, I've been talking to him, throughout the whole thing, and he's doing what he has to do, and he's doing his own thing, and whatever, who knows, our paths will cross in the future, collaborate, and all the rest of it. And it's a bitter regret to me that he won't be part of GB News.
Now,
that's a freedom of expression. So there you go.
Sorry, I'm bored with these ones. Did you get to visit the ice wall?
No, but I have been in Antarctica. Well, I was part of a team that sailed a 50-foot yacht from the Falkland Islands into Antarctica, across the Southern Ocean. And so I've been in the presence of icebergs and all of that, but I haven't been, I didn't see, I've only been in the sea and a little archipelago called South Orkney, which is just inside the Antarctic Preserve, but I didn't encounter the whatever.
I think I've seen the ice wall. I went to Svalbard, but there's another story. Okay, this is my favorite question. This is going to be the last question. You don't mind if I swear, do you, in this last question? How much of a cunt is Matthew Sweet?
I'm not 100% certain that he's a real person.
Yeah.
I'm not, if you told me that he was just an avatar that was the identifiable front for opposition to whatever, some of the things that I have been saying and doing, then that wouldn't surprise me at all. So unless and until I actually see, what's his name? Matthew
Sweet.
Unless and until I actually see him walk into the room, I will not absolutely believe that he's a real human being.
I really, really thought that Matthew Sweet would whip up a campaign to cancel this whole event using the A word, the anti-Semitism word, which seems to be the magic key that closes down everything. And, I mean, you didn't even say anything. Like, you didn't say...
Well, no, I mean, if you say... I mean, I believe even globalist, I think, is a word that's become almost...
Everything's anti-Semitic now, everything.
You can't say although I think you can say globalize. I think it's all right as the verb, but when you turn it into if you turn it into an adjective or a noun, I think you're in different water. But, as I said earlier, 10 minutes ago, I believe there's a centralizing... I mean, I don't think it's a secret, is it? I mean, Ursula von der Leyen or Klaus Schwab or...
They're all nuts.
Or Liz Truss can talk about one world government,
oh, yeah.
and that's okay. But if you say it from our side of the picket fence, you are an anti-Semite, which...
Yeah.
It's not as though people aren't talking about one world government. But when it would appear that whenever someone like me talks about one world government, that I'm being anti-Semitic, and to me that's just Kafkaesque nonsense.
Yeah, it is. Well, thank you everyone for being a lovely audience, and thank you, Neil.
Thank you. Thanks.
Before we go, put your hands up if you still think Neil is controlled opposition after all that. Because I don't. I think he's a good guy. Again, one more. I'll see you in the pub.